Well, Toby, thanks for chatting with us this morning. Thank you so much. And a couple of gaps in the inquiry panel to fill, the Minister, of course. What about Bill Bayfield? What did he bring to proceedings?
Well, he brought a good balanced view of, farming and forestry and an ability to sort of be removed from both areas as well. And, it was a real shame that he had to step down. And I think the new fellow Dave is actually pretty good as well. He's got a lot of experience behind him in terms of disaster management. So that'll bring a different feel to the inquiry team. And unfortunately, he's right at the end of consultation. He's had a couple of days of consultation and then they're off, on their report writing now.
Oh my goodness. So, the inquiry didn't get underway until late February. And now we're into April already, which has flown by. And of course, it's due by the end of the month. I know you've suggested it's just a wee bit tight.
Yeah, we've had concerns from the day that it was announced really about the tight time frame. Hekia Parat has been very clear on that when we've met with her, that the time frame's a time frame. They're going to do the best they can given what they've got. But it's a very complicated situation that we're in terms of land use and slash management and things like that. And we think it should be done justice by being extended to allow, especially now we've got new minister and new panelists, to give us the amount of time to feel it's been done justice. It sort of felt that Minister Nash, at the time when it was announced, was just doing it because of the public backlash, of all the infrastructure damage from the storms. We really, and he had the attitude of, well, I'm not going to be bound by any of the recommendations anyway. So really made it feel like a tick box exercise. Now with Minister Nash gone and Bill Bayfield having to resign as well, it's left some questions for us to say, well, why don't we actually extend this down to a proper job? Let's focus on it. Let's do it once. Let's not, do it again in another 6 months or 12 months or whatever it might be. We want some good quality recommendations that are going to carry our region forward into prosperity.
It suggests or sounds a bit like Stuart Nash might not be such a great loss, quite honestly. The new minister, any thoughts on, I think it's Megan Woods, is that right?
Yeah, Megan Woods is the acting forestry minister, and I think she's proven herself to be very adept at her ministerial roles. But how much can you dump onto one person to be able to get on top of everything? This is a very complicated and very, divisive issue that we're dealing with in terms of land use and things like that. Stuart Nash, for all his other failings, was well voiced in forestry. He was actually a good forestry minister. But having someone in the acting role while we've got this inquiry going on really does make it sound like it's just a tick box exercise if they don't extend it.
Now, you mentioned earlier, of course, that you were concerned that Hawke's Bay wasn't included in this. It was pretty much Tairāwhiti that the focus was on. Has that changed at all, or is Hawke's Bay still out?
Hawke's Bay is still out. And really interesting, when they launched the inquiry, it was a land use inquiry focusing on sedimentation, woody debris, and our land use and how we're utilising our land. And the question we asked back is, how is Hawke's Bay any different? The woody debris down in Hawke's Bay was different. No one's going to argue about that. There wasn't the quantities of forestry slash. But surely anybody who's seen the impacts on Esk Valley and on those fertile flats of Hawke's Bay have seen the sedimentation. So why is that not part of us looking at this? They've been very badly affected. And I'm sure those landowners and those orchardists in Hawke's Bay really want a good understanding of how that sediment got mobilised and what are the solutions going to be to help mitigate that into the future, if they can. And that it makes sense that it goes as part of this inquiry. You're covering the whole thing, all the storm damage all at once. And there may well be lessons we can learn from both areas to apply, to try and limit the amount of sedimentation we've seen.
I also understand there's a lot of slash turning up from Gisborne on Hawke's Bay beaches. Is that accurate? I think I've read that somewhere.
Yeah, look, I'm not surprised if it is. I haven't seen that personally, but we do know on our catchments without forestry behind when harvested, our beaches are now being filled up with woody debris that are now coming back in as the easterlies have swung round. It's all flowed out and now it's floating back in again. And it's causing more consternation on some of these areas that don't have rivers feeding into them, or any forestry on those catchments that were harvested. So we saw from Wairoa at what's the place called? Sorry. And sort of Portorino there, the beach inland of outside of Portorino there, Waikari, there were huge volumes of logging debris on those beaches there. Nobody actually lives there other than there's a few locals there and some iwi down there, some Māori down there. It's not surprising that's now washing down further south into Hawke's Bay as the currents take it that way. So it's very disappointing for everybody.
Of course, we've been here before, Cyclone Bowler. There were quick reactions there, knee-jerk reactions, I think you suggest, which have in some part led to the disaster we're seeing now, 30 or 40 years on.
Yeah, and to be fair, the reactions to Cyclone Bowler were probably justified. What we didn't consider was what happens when we go to harvest all of these trees. There was a lack, we had 30 years to plan that. And they well knew what the issues were going to be, but they've just chosen, and this is local government, central government, as well as the forestry industry themselves. They've chosen to ignore those to put profits of corporations over, downstream effects to communities, iwi, and and our beaches and marine environment, which is really unfortunate. And what we're also seeing is that it hasn't solved the erosion issue. It solved it temporarily, but in that time, we actually haven't had a storm as large as Gabrielle come through. So, it was only going to be a matter of time, and this should really be the wake-up call that this government and the people of New Zealand need to show that we need to change the way we do things.